Hey guys, in this video I am going to continue with my Watercolor 101 Basics series that I started, and I'm going to talk about some of the basic things that you will need to get if you're just setting up your studio and planning to start with watercolor. And I'm going to keep it really simple. I don't want to make it expensive for you guys, but I'm just going to talk about the main things that you will need to get started if you're just beginning with watercolor. While I'm showing you some of these things that you will need, I will also be showing you one of the paintings that I did. It was a commission, but I also painted it as a full-length tutorial for my Patreon members. If you would like to learn from me more in depth, join me over on Patreon or just subscribe to this channel, and I always have new videos every week. So let's get right into it, and I'm gonna start by talking about my water bottle. I use it to activate my palette. I spray my palette to get my paints wet, and I also use it in the painting process to add texture to backgrounds by spritzing the painting when it's almost done. And I also use it a ton to re-moisten my paper because so many of my techniques rely on keeping the paper a little bit moist. So I use my spritzer a lot just to re-moisten my watercolor paper while I'm painting. I found this veggie wash spray bottle, and I like that it was small, and it just happens to be that the spray is a nice enough mist that I like using it. And you just have to test out spray bottles until you find one that doesn't make too big of droplets. So this one has been really good. You might want to get some masking. I use masking in almost every single painting. This is by Winsor & Newton. Make sure you get the removable kind. There is a permanent kind, at least there used to be. So I made that mistake once and never again. But and this stuff goes bad, so you have to get new masking, every few months. I would say don't keep it longer than 6 months before you get a new bottle. That happened on my Bengal cat series that I did for my Patreon students. So they got to see all my frustration when I went to take my masking off and it didn't really remove correctly. It stayed sticky on the paper. Okay, what do you put your paper on? Do you need to stretch your paper? There's this misconception that you need to stretch your paper. I don't even know what that... I've never stretched my paper. When I found from a professional artist that he didn't stretch his paper, he just taped it right on down and got going. That's what I did, because it just seemed like a waste of time to stretch paper if that doesn't really do anything. So I don't stretch my paper. I don't pre-stretch it or anything. I just tape my arches, cold press, 140 pound almost every time. That's almost all I paint on. I just tape it with this art tape, X-Fasten. I've gone through a lot of tape over the years trying to find just the thing, and this is art tape, and so far this is my current favorite. I used to have a great cheap masking tape that I used that was wonderful, made by Walmart Duck brand. They changed the formula and it stopped working, but it used to be so perfect. But oh well. Now this kind of works. It doesn't work as well. It doesn't stick to my backing as well, but that's what I use. And I use these backing boards that framers use to put behind pictures. And you can also use those signage boards that, like real estate agents use or for political campaigns. That's what you can use. They're cheap and lightweight. And again, these are well loved. I've had them for years. They last for years. You can reuse them and reuse them. And I just tape along the edges of my paper to hold it down, 1 and 2, to make a nice border when it comes off like this. Here's an original, and you can see that when I took the tape off, it creates a nice border. So that's another advantage of using tape. And see, it bled under a little bit there. For paper, I use arches, cold pressed, 140 pound, almost every single time. That's all I use. And I would say, please, 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 I know it's expensive, but your watercolor painting results, you can't even practice these techniques that I talk about without watercolor paper that's professional level. You just you can't even do it on cheap paper or non-watercolor paper. It's totally not the same. The paper won't act the same. You won't be able to layer or blend or scrub or anything. You just can't do a watercolor painting on anything other than good quality watercolor paper. So sorry, that's the sticking point there. If you have to, get Cotman student grade paint. If you have to, get cheap brushes, which you don't have to spend money on brushes anyway, and I don't use 300-pound one because it takes so much more water to work on it, and it's not, you can't do a tracing on a window on 300-pound. It's too thick, so I don't like that about it, and it's too expensive. Okay, one other thing I want to talk about is to have a jar of water, and a lot of artists have 2 jars. They have 1 jar to get the majority of the paint out, and then a second jar to get their brush completely clean. I've never found I needed to do that, but so many artists say to do that, so I will tell you that little trick. You can do it if you want. I only do 1 jar. I just use an old glass pickle jar for my water. Alright guys, I hope that this video was helpful. If you would like to watch the other videos in this series about the basics of getting set up and the basic concepts of painting watercolor, be sure to view my playlist called Watercolor Basics, and I hope to see you in the next video, and be sure to check back next week. I'll have a new video. All right, you guys, have a good week. Bye.